Okay, cool. Do you want me to talk then about the classes?
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Well, the monk, I think everyone's probably familiar with. It's a melee physical DPS class and playmaker. It has a high innate dodge chance. It's a top DPS class when attacking from the front. It can feign death, wears leather armor, and kind of a little bit tanky, but comes mostly from that innate dodge chance and possibly blocking. So the Beastmaster is we were calling it Warden, but we felt that wasn't an accurate representation. It's a melee physical DPS and support, specialized in dual wield melee attacks. It's a hybrid of the Rogue and the Shaman. Wears leather armor. It can shapeshift into animals and has a lot of ties to animals. We are also talking about a animal taming system, so it's also a pet class. But it's you don't just have the pet, right? You actually go out into the world and tame an animal.
Yeah, and for those of you like picking up on the reference, yeah, I don't know if it'll be 2 pet ferrets, but yeah, I think someone earlier mentioned some fire and ice inspiration as well. Definitely, this just felt like a good opportunity to switch it from Warden, which people are like, what does that even mean, to something that is kind of nostalgic and iconic. Yeah, and so Goblin, how do you want to insert sort of thoughts on that? I want to make sure that you're speaking to stuff as we go as well. And then some of the questions that you guys have, like, will monks have weight restriction? Some of it we'll be able to answer right away. There will be, I mean, given how early all of this is, please, the big disclaimer is that we're going to be working through things. We're telling you our current thoughts on them. And we're going to iterate and work on things, and there'll be some things that we kind of have been back and forth on, and we'll be figuring out as we go. So, yeah. So, Goblin?
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention something on the monk here. Well, one thing that I actually hold on. Well, I'll go to the Beastmaster because there is lots of talk about that, but. The Beastmaster, definitely fire and ice. Everybody, gets that right away with the loincloth and those giant quads, and very Jaguar God type focus on the aesthetic there, and it was pretty hard to find exactly where the Warden should sit conceptually, and then I ended up trying to find something like that, like very iconic from the past, and it ended up being pretty much along those lines, and I'm pretty happy with the design overall, showing as much skin as he has and everything.
I gotta say, as soon as you popped off with this concept, it was immediate, like, okay. Yeah, it really feels like we've got to go Beastmaster with this guy and just go all in on the nostalgia on it. But it's a bold design, but man, I really like it. And thank you for getting the additional, pumping up the quads a little bit. They look great.
Yeah. Frazetta is definitely known for his quads. And then Monk was something that we iterated on a lot. There's some talk of having a lot of like Eastern influences, but then we wanted to kind of separate ourselves from any particular culture with Monk, because we thought that, well, everybody's going to be able to do this, and everybody's going to be able to have this. So it's more like something you opt into, like going to a temple or something along those lines. But So it was more like, okay, well, how are we gonna approach that without making it just like a complete like Eastern monk or something? So I ended up straightening up a lot of the curves. Like instead of having baggy pants, we had some boxy kind of shorts, and as well as that cloth that comes down, or not cloth, the leather that comes down in the middle. But then we also looked at a bunch of different references for different types of monks that have been done in the past. So what was it Dark Sun? What was the
Oh yeah, in one of the versions of it, when the pauldron was much bigger and spikier, and and the mask was more, it looked more Metal Mask instead of sort of blending in with the other stuff. It really did have like that Dark Sun, the bald guy with like were they like sickle weapons or whatever? So yeah, that was that thing that we were looking at.
Yeah, and then we brought in we played around with a little bit of like an Arabic theme as well, and that's where kind of the cloak ended up landing us in. So we're taking a little bit from that too, and then I showed this to my friend, and one of the current iterations to my friend, and he showed me the Quake Monk, and I was like, you know what? That's really like I get where that's coming from. It was a totally different kind of take on it, but it reminded me of the kind of like stone boxiness that I have on the legs and arms, those rings that go across, and reminded me of that motif that the monk has had in the past. And so we added that in, and I think it added a huge amount to the monk's look.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's definitely a new take, but it's gonna be pretty versatile, and it's got a fun iconic look. So it'll be nice to see some of the different variations and different ways that we can riff off of what's kind of core here, which will be the case with all of these, right? This gives us something to wrap our heads around and then be creative from this point forward, and hopefully it gives you distinct looks that you guys are seeing in chat that you can see and go, oh, okay, cool, I can identify the class. So cool. So let's move on to Shaman.
Okay. So the Shaman is a healer and support class. It's specialized in heals, specifically their efficient heal over time lines, melee buffs, and debuffs. So right now I'm playing with the idea of them being the best melee haste and melee slower. So really good at hasting allies, statistic buffs, and yeah, haste, and then obviously the slow debuff line.
Cool. Goblin, what were you thinking with this one?
Yeah, there was I really liked the idea of bringing the Shaman into something a whole lot more like Hexers type thing with those gameplay elements in mind. And so I tried to add a little bit of that spikiness and with the teeth and the mask and everything. But one of the things was like, I guess to preface all of these, and maybe I should have mentioned this at the very beginning, and I think Shawn mentioned this, so I might be reiterating, but the idea was for all of these classes to be like the most kind of iconic version of each class. And it's the exact same thing, same approach that I had with the races. It's like, this is going to be the most iconic version of that class or the iconic version of that race, so that we can build off these, right? And so, like thinking about the major shapes, so I'm not breaking them down into crazy amounts of shapes, or like making them too detailed on the first shot. So the idea is that we take these, the Shaman's probably going to have like these spikes coming out of their shoulders like that, or have like some sort of necklace, ideally round shaped, or rings around the ankles, and then all the other stuff can like really build off of that. And thinking about the material and having the chainmail on there and in between different pieces, so you have like basically a format in which we can make variations for different armors and pieces of gear and stuff like that. So and I just wanted, I thought the mask was probably the most important part. We also have a dream catcher there for the staff.
Cool. Yeah, the question earlier was there was a question much earlier about whether or not we are wanting to release with all of these, or if they're just concepts. I would say everything we're doing is a concept. Every concept that we're doing, we're excited about and want to eventually release. The approach that we ultimately end up taking towards release will also help define how many classes are available at that launch point. But you guys can see, I mean, we're still super early, but we're in playing. We're already playing a lot of these classes in game. We're switching it up and getting it in, and it's not just like we've got one class online or anything like that. So the goal is for us to just keep hammering on stuff, keep sharing with all of you, keep getting feedback, eventually get folks in to play with us some, and then just work towards the launch and see what happens. But like you were saying with regards to wanting a high character count on your account so that you can play all of them, and Ollie was responding that we love alts. Yeah, we love alts, and we've got the feeling that if things go according to plan, that these will be the first of the classes, and we'll continue to add classes and races as we go, just because we are super into alts and want to invest in the journey. We want to invest in the leveling game and make that fun, and hope that people want to replay. So, Spellblade.
So the Spellblade is a damage and support and off-tank class, specialized in melee and magic. Hybrid of the fighter and the wizard, wears leather armor, and the idea I'm playing around with is it will have access to a unique line of self-shielding and absorbing magic, in addition to the more baseline kind of buffs. I'm also thinking about a unique mechanic for them where you can, there will be weapon procs that you can use, and the kind of the sword kind of shows that off in the concept. But so one of the procs I'm thinking of is up to a cap you can build a secondary life resource called shields, but that's still just like an idea. It hasn't been implemented or anything, but I really want to play into like shielding and barriers, but then also offensive magic and procs and nukes that you'll have access to.
Nick, were you thinking with the shielding and stuff that it'd be one of those, it'd essentially be like a self buff that's managed pretty actively? So if they're off tanking or whatever, it's one of those things where there's a certain amount that they're absorbing, and as that's getting burned through, they're recasting to sort of be able to continue, or?
Yeah, something along those lines. So cool. It's right now that's more of on the conceptual side for me. I have to think it through a little bit, but something along those lines would be pretty cool.
Cool.
And for the design of this guy, actually, if you could scroll over to the wizard, just so people kind of have an idea of what those two kind of look like side by side. Maybe I should have put them side by side, but. There's the wizard, right? And so we wanted that kind of like belted fallen cloak. I ended up turning into more of a vest. We can go back to the Spellblade again. But focusing on enchanting their weapons, and then also having diversity within the cast about what each character wears, like either on their head or on their shoulders or within the full. So you'll notice in a lot of these that there's not a lot of repeats when it comes to cloak shape or length, head, helmet or design or shoulder design. So in this case, we have that leather skull cap, which I thought, because we didn't have a skull cap up until this point, and I played a lot around with that. If you were on the streams when I was working on it, we went back and forth with the skull cap on the wizard and the spellblade like 3 times, and spellblade at one point had like a kind of like a fisherman's wizard cap, and that was kind of fun, but this ended up being a way better choice.
Cool. Yeah, it was funny when we were looking at these. It was like, and we'll get to the wizard, but it was like, let's make sure that we're showing the sword on the wizard's belt, and on the flip side, let's have some books and scrolls and stuff on the spellblade's waist, so that you can kind of pick up on what's going on there. The Elementalist.
Sorry, before I jump into the Elementalist,
oh, for sure.
I want to explain. So I'm kind of saying some of these classes are like supports. So like a lot of the hybrids, I'm considering giving them basically group utility buffs, so that, you know, they're not on par with the top DPS classes. They're very serviceable DPS. You know, they're comparable, but not, you know, at that top DPS tier. But the group buff that they bring, you know, is pretty darn good. And depending on what kind of class composition you have in your group, you may want to bring a Spellblade, or you may want to bring a Ranger, or you may want to bring a Beastmaster. So that's what I mean when I say, you know, like kind of like hybrid support. Not like a full-on support class like the Shaman or anything like that, but kind of support utility, group utility. So as far as the Elementalist goes, it's a damage, a ranged DPS caster class that specialize in elemental pets, summoned items, debuffs, and there's something I want to do is, or play with, is kind of synergistic things you can do with your elemental pets. So if you combine like an air pet with like a fire nuke, you can have kind of like a backdraft effect, stuff like that. So mixing and matching synergistic buffs and debuffs, and what pet you have and what spells you're casting to create different effects.
Right on. And Belfaster was asking, do you see the Spellblade bringing more int-class buffs, melee buffs, or both?
I see them maybe a little bit of both, but kind of leaning more towards the spellcasters, kind of applying debuffs for them. But we'll have to see.
Cool.
And as far as the Elementalist goes, when it comes to design, one of the most important parts that I found was we were really focusing on the pet portion of it, and the focus on a specific element. So what ends up happening, I found, was we went actually through a couple different designs. I think the Enchanter and the Elementalist were at one point swapped, and then I had to redesign them once they did get swapped into some other options. But there was this element of being connected to your elemental pet that I really liked. So I kind of imagined it like having, you know, like a parrot on your shoulder or something, like that sort of thing. But instead, you know, it's your pauldron that acts as almost like a wick for your fire, or it would be like a rock or like a stone or something if you were for earth, and then water or air, that sort of thing. So having that element being represented, your main element being represented on your shoulder like that, I thought was a pretty strong idea. And so we went with that. And that, and as well as having those themed gems or stones in your gear as well.
Yeah, and then we talked a little bit about cloaks. I know you're looking at cloaks as well when you're designing these, and it's something that we want to play around with and see if we can if we can do it in a way where we like it aesthetically, and if we end up with like capes and cloaks and cloth and stuff feeling the way we hope, then we can get creative like you did with this flame cloak.
Oh yeah, the flame cloak. I'm not exactly sure if that's going to be the hit. You know, it's going to be something that we test into 3D, and if it doesn't work, then we have, you know, there'll be like a backup. Like we'll figure out what else goes on the back slot. But I did really like the idea of having like an elemental like back cloak or something of like a soft fire or flame working its way down your back as an elementalist. It adds a whole lot to the class aesthetic and iconography. So it's something that I definitely want.
Yeah. Then when we do future concept iterations, we'll get some concepts that show backpacks and some other things as well, because I think it just would be fun to be able to have that in an adventure game. So cool. Enchanter.
Okay, so the Enchanter is a support class specialized in charm, crowd control, attacking and enhancing the mind, and enchanting allies and their equipment. Currently, I'm, thinking about, if they have access to the whole kind of trifecta of haste, slow, and resist debuffs, like the magical resist debuffs. I'm thinking about, so this is another thing that I'm trying with the whole, like, all the classes, is maybe a reshuffle of certain utility spells and debuffs, etc. So there's more class interdependence needed. So the idea maybe, so charm is, just a very powerful ability, but it's also really powerful because Enchanter, in other games in the past have, like EQ is basically had access to, haste and slow and charm and tash. So definitely considering reshuffling some of those so that to kind of work a charm pet in a group that you'll have to, bring other classes instead of just, the Enchanter kind of just being awesome and having all that stuff. But, some of my hesitance too is that being a pure support class, having all those things are kind of their powers. So I'm really want to do some testing and see how that feels. If the class still feels good, if they lose something, but I also want them to gain stuff too. For example, I have this concept called Enchant Ally, which is a
cool.
You can buff a single group mate. This is a concept. We don't have this in the game yet, but the concept is you can buff a single group mate, allowing you to switch views between you and the enchanted ally, which gives you a secondary ability bar, and it allows you to cast a small set of unique abilities which originate from the enchanted ally. So imagine you enchant ally your monk polar or your tank, and it basically allows you to kind of work with them as they are, maybe doing some kind of playmaking or polling, or, stuff like that. The Enchanter will also have access to a mana regen buff, mana drains, mana dumps, and other debuffs. So kind of what you would expect there. But yeah, so that Enchanter is definitely gonna be one of those controversial classes, I feel. But I personally, I think charm is a cool mechanic, and I want to keep it. But maybe there's some ways that we can promote more teamwork and group play in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. There were questions with regards to pet controls in chat. One thing that I would say is I'm curious what people, when you ask that question, maybe you have something in mind. So feel free to let us know as well, sort of what you're thinking when you ask the question and what you're looking for.
So I see some questions in chat that I wanted to address about the Enchanter. So Belfaster asked, what does enchanting others' equipment look like? You know, I've been kind of thinking about like potentially just enchanting weapons, stuff like that for different procs or effects, and maybe even visually showing like a VFX change. Then let's see what else there was. Zoidberg also said, would it make sense that enchanters can only charm humanoids? That was another thing I was thinking about. But you know, we'll definitely we'll see. And so enchant ally was, you know, I consider it a powerful utility that say you're not into the charming thing. That's like an either or kind of situation. You either have the charm pet or you have enchant ally. You can't do the both at the same time. An enchant ally would only be a single target group member. You can't cast it on multiple people at a time. So yeah.
Cool.
As far as the design goes for Enchanter, it was Zukin that was really pushing for this sort of look for the Enchanter, which is more like you have this like high end sort of like tapestry going on with their designs, and you know it feels a whole lot more like high society, like they're intelligent and they know that they're intelligent, and then they're able to like be more charismatic and charm people and through that. So we ended up swapping, like I said before, the Elementalist and Enchanter, and I think for the better, because I really like that that take on it now. There's a lot of stuff going on when it comes to shape motifs, so that you can that I try and have like one or two shape motifs that I try and bring into each character's design. So I'll start with one, and then I'll see how I can apply that into like a character's design. And for this case, it was kind of you can usually look to the staff to see like exactly what that shape motif is, if for a lot of it, and then what I'll usually do is see how like the rest of the design like breaks that up, or where I can break it up like kind of naturally. And so like instead of having something that directly like opposes it directly or at the very beginning, I'll see like how it kind of interplays with the body first, whatever shape I choose, or shape motif that I choose, what type of curves that you put in and that sort of thing. See how it plays in first, and then if it needs something else, you can bring in something else as well. But for the Enchanter, it worked pretty well, I thought, with these like with these sharp drops and having this this kind of like arrow throughout their design.
Yeah, it's funny now that after you made the swap between the two, I can't picture them any other way. Like it just makes so much sense, though. It was a good call, Zukin, when you gave the feedback, and then yeah, the work on these is fantastic. I love the faces as well. Right now, I'm actually, as I'm looking at these more, you know, I'm excited to get the actual faces in game. So hopefully folks can see it well enough on your end, but we'll have this the images available.
Something I really wanted to say really quick, when it comes to the way that feedback works in behind the scenes, generally something will happen where I'll have a concept or something, and then someone will come in and say, well, actually no, we need to go this other direction. And usually I'm pretty strong with like, well, I actually really like this, but you know what, I'll give it a try. And almost every single time when I give that other option a try, it ends up being way better. Like usually that's the case. It's just investing more time and thought into it that ends up being the better case. And in this case, definitely I'd say Zukin made the good call. He was our Enchanter representative at that point, so ultimately, I think I said this about the races as well, but we have so many passionate people here working on this that like really care. So they are sort of representatives of the class that they like or the race that they like, and so like I can always it's like knowing and being able to talk to people that knows how and what makes something tick is really great.
Yep. Yeah, it's great how much discussion goes on behind the scenes on this stuff. Ready to move on to Druid?
Yeah, sure. So the Druid is a healer and support class, specialized in heals, debuffs, and crowd control. So I'm kind of thinking that they're going to be able to actually debuff resists. They're going to be able to multi-root. So I'm considering certain classes only being able to root a single target, so that certain classes like Druid really shines in rooting, being able to root multiple targets. Makes the Enchanter's crowd control more worthwhile as well, if you can only single target root. But that's something we're going to play with. That's not final. It has a quick cast PB AoE snare, can AoE root, has rain AoE heals. Kind of fantasy behind their magic is kind of moonfire and lightning magic and blizzards and stuff like that. So really weather based. And yeah, the idea is to kind of make the class feel a lot better than the EQ counterpart, and yeah, just more appealing, more debuffs, more crowd control, and stuff like that.
Now, as for the design on this, we had already covered the animalistic sort of like motifs that with Beastmaster and a little bit in Shaman. So I wanted to keep a little bit more away from that, and so we went almost full nature on this, which is a little bit of moon magic with that crescent, crescent motif, and trying to apply that into either the shoulders and the torso and that sort of thing. But there was a softness, or not softness, but like a like I didn't want them to feel wild, so I put in some straight lines in there to make them feel more like a little bit orderly, or not orderly, I suppose. The right word would be composed. So in all, it's going to be the driving themes for this was nature, a little bit of moon magic, and this composed nature that I think represents and the gameplay elements that we're going for with Druid.
Cool. I was watching some of the questions in chat as well. Is there anything else you wanted to pick up, Nick?
I don't think so. I think it was mostly art questions.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny as you were both talking, like trying to remember and also jot down notes, because there's some fun ideas coming up just based off the stuff that you're seeing. There's a question. Sorry if I missed it. Did you say the Druid could change the weather?
Yes, yeah, we got to bring that in. That's one of the best flavor elements of a Druid. So yeah, without a doubt.
And then actually have that linked to some of the actual systems, since we're hoping to do plenty with what spawned when and what sort of opportunities may exist for you in the environment based off of the state of the zone or the state of the world at the time. So as you were mentioning the Druid's different abilities, I was like, we should follow up and talk about biome specific spells. Be interesting to have some biome specific spells that you can load in. So
Zoidberg asked, y'all might have answered, all this art gives a lot of personality to each character class. How focused will you be on custom sets versus generic armor? Do you plan on having a fair amount of both? So something that I think the conversation was actually really early when it comes to when it was in the class discussion, but the idea is that these pieces of armor and geometry or something along those lines, they'll fit into the armor slot, or so it would be like cloth, leather, plate, chainmail, that sort of thing. And there's not going to be a whole lot of restrictions. And so you'll probably, especially early on, you'll probably see a lot of, classes mixing and matching some of these aesthetics, and they're going to come up with some really great things. But this is going to be like, once you're level, or you're going up in the levels, you'll find something that's for your class and like specifically for your class. And, by the time that you got into a high level, ideally you're wearing stuff that looks really like your class. So you can really feel your class fantasy like settle in over the course. We're not just going to give it to you. I think it was Final Fantasy I was playing, where I was playing a wizard or black mage or something like that, and the first item that I got was this really nice big red wizard hat, and I was like, I love being a fire mage. But I realized afterwards, like, I got exactly what I wanted as far as like class aesthetic, like, when I was level like 3 or something. So I was like, maybe working for it a little bit makes a little bit more sense. But I'm not sure. I might be speaking for myself here only. What do you think, Shawn?
Yeah, it's a situation where we want to provide the opportunity, especially if it feels like there was an investment in collecting, right? Because for us, it's a big deal to return to that state where when you see people in game and they've got something you haven't seen before, or they look a certain way, you're like, oh wow, what did they do to get that? Or oh man, you aspire to get to it. So I think really keeping it in mind, it speaks to that idea of having to go out and kind of earn the look. The other thing too is we also want to allow for as much flexibility as possible and agency of, the folks playing each character to kind of get a look that they like. So we also don't, on the flip side, we don't want to trap anybody in like, this is your class aesthetic. That is all you're going to look like for the entirety of your 20 years of playing. So, yeah, it'll be a goal of trying to find a lot of different iconic takes on the themes, and provide those at different points, and also allow the flexibility of being able to wear other stuff. Who was it just said? Nicodemus was like, the wizard hat is iconic, but I'd like to see a new variation on the trope. For us, we are very trope heavy and love tropes and want to lean into tropes, but yeah, definitely there'll be other takes and other ideas as we go. These are just sort of the first like iconic takes on classes, so the hope is when people look at them at a glance, they're like, oh, okay, I know exactly what that is. Yeah. So I think...
Yeah, that's something for sure. Sorry for cutting you off
there.
No,
go ahead.
Something for sure about all these class designs is we do want to hit like that iconic / generic like area, like first and foremost, and kind of branch off there if we have either the resources or time, I think is the right way of going about it. Because if we hit those, then we know we're not making a worse rendition of them, or like something that doesn't hit that fantasy. Because I'd imagine that someone that's wanting to play a wizard, if we didn't have that wizard hat, then they would never be able to then achieve that wizard fantasy with the classic wizard hat. That's just something I don't plan on, or I don't like the idea of. So definitely there's going to be, I believe that there should be variation, but we want to hit these like iconic looks first, for sure.
Cool. Nick, were there any chat questions that you wanted to hit before we moved on? Or and let me clarify one thing. When you see hey Croc, it's Ali in chat answering questions, that is Ali. And If you see Pattis in chat answering questions or Zukin in chat answering questions, likewise Jim Fogg or, well, Goblin or Nick, then that's all team people, so definitely keep an eye out in chat for answers, as well as here on voice.
I saw a question about will weather impact buffs and debuffs. Undecided at this time. I think what Shawn was referring to is more content availability. Like, say it's raining, you might have access to, you know, some certain mobs may spawn or something along those lines. So undecided on the buffs and debuffs part, but yeah, more content availability thing, I think. Yeah,
it'd be more like mobs or things that you can harvest or collect or the things of that nature. So want to move into the Necromancer, and folks, if we're missing any of your questions, once we get through the classes, we still have plenty of time. We're only an hour in, and we can hit some of the other stuff that we might have missed. Keep in mind that we are still early, and this is like a high-level overview to get us started.
Okay, so the Necromancer is a damage and support class, specialized in undead pets, debuffs, drains, and off heals. So, you know, we'll have the undead pets, we'll have the classic skeleton pet, but there will also be, you know, different variants and different kinds of pets. You know, similar to like how the WoW Warlock has a kind of a arsenal of pets for different situations. That'll be similar for the Necromancer. So you'll get those sooner than the end game. Kind of like, you know, in EQ you have the skeleton pet, you know, forever, and then you get like the Spectre and stuff like that. So it'll happen much before that in your journeys. They'll have Charm Undead. Some of the fantasy I want to play off of is blood magic for some of the heals and drains and stuff like that. So I know like a lot of people are really fond of the blood mage from Vanguard, so definitely want to get some of that kind of tied in a little bit, along with you know, your traditional more like poison and disease and shadow based magic, and considering giving them some really strong debuffs as well. You know, we talked about, you know, maybe moving something off the Enchanter. You know, Necromancer could be one of those beneficiary classes where maybe they were to get, you know, they're slow or something, but that's not decided. That's just kind of a theory craft at this point. But yeah, so that's the idea for the Necromancer.
As far as the design goes, the idea of commanding a bunch of skeletal pets, maybe want to make this guy feel a little bit taller. So we have that unbroken cloak that goes from shoulder all the way down to his feet. Really sharp knives looking pieces of cloth. And then as well for their shoulder slot, we're thinking that they might have, or they'll have a bunch of like bone necklaces and stuff hanging off and into their chest and along that line. Very another or something I want to point out here as well. If you'll notice, there's a lot of different hoods in the design. So you'll see the Necromancer, the Ranger, the Cleric, and Inquisitor. They all have hoods, and as well as the Rogue, but they're all different shaped hoods. And so we have a variety of those to fulfill like each class silhouette and shape design, and then that will also allow you to mix and match a whole lot. Like we're kind of curating like these really good parts that will create a whole lot of variety, like way more than even I can imagine. Amounts of variety between like all the pieces of gear. So I'm really excited about that.
So another thing I wanted to add was another mechanic I think Ali mentioned in the chat, and it kind of reminded me. I believe our game supports up to having 3 pets, so maybe there's you know, maybe we play with the idea of them being kind of more of a like swarm kind of multi-pet class. Maybe that's not like a permanent thing. Maybe that's like a temporary cooldown, like kind of Army of the Dead kind of style ability where you can, for a short time, maybe have multi-pet. Another idea that we have been talking about is maybe doing kind of a raise the dead ability, but you know, those are again just kind of concepts and ideas, and you know, it may be something that we do, but yeah, I don't know. I'd like to hear everyone's opinion on it, but yeah.
I've got the feeling this is going to trigger a lot more class design in the Discord. For those of you that are new here, here's a link to our Discord. And if you're really new here and you don't know what the game is, here's a link to our website. So cool. Let's move on to the wizard.
Cool. So wizard is magical range DPS. One thing that I've been really thinking about is them being kind of an execute class. So think you know, lower health percentages. They get benefits and perks off of that by landing a nuke during those times, or a special, you know, maybe a special nuke line during those times. So we decided early on, and this is Shawn really loved this idea, and I love too, is they can actually dual wield and use swords. So we really wanted to kind of play off of the Gandalf fantasy, and basically wizards can definitely get in the fray. They might not be doing the best physical DPS, but there may be some perks and bonuses to kind of meleeing in combat, and that you could see that maybe in some other classes too, but we definitely wanted to get that like that showdown with like the Balrog kind of moment for the wizards. So expect something like that. So again, you know, also expect kind of weapon procs, buffs, considering giving them some more utility and debuffs too. One of the things I was considering is kind of, you know, enchanters previously in other games like EQ had the magical debuff resist. Was considering maybe moving that to the wizard, but that's not like a set thing or anything. That's just like an idea I'm toying with to kind of, again, like I was saying before, maybe rearrange what classes get what utility, so there's more kind of interdependence. So another thing is, in EQ, the wizards really were kind of mana starved a lot, and part of like being an execute class is, you know, maybe there's some kind of mana return for getting those conditional nukes in, so you could become closer to like being mana neutral, or sometimes maybe even being mana positive when correctly fulfilling those various conditionals, or using cooldowns and engaging in melee combat at opportune moments. So yeah, and they are obviously a cloth-wearing class as well.
Yeah.
No. Basically, I just had to paint Gandalf. No, I played around with a lot of different stuff. Like we had, I think it was during the stream, this wizard ended up having some red and blue cloaks, and then a way more pointy hat. But then it was against my original intuition actually to do so, because I really liked the neutralness of a wizard, and then being able to then find gear that would branch out into those sort of areas. So like if you did want to play like a very heavy, let's say like fire wizard or something, where you're casting fireballs and just destroying on certain nukes, like you could do that and fulfill that fantasy. But this wasn't about like landing you or pushing you into each side or either side or anything with the wizard, because so we went for that more neutral look, which I think fits their aesthetic. It gives people the fantasy that they want. But yeah, they definitely Gandalf inspired, a little bit more brown and leather in there to even it out. It's actually very difficult to hit that aesthetic without like being too close to it, and we might have gone a little bit closer than necessary. But I think it's I think with the variation that will be in game, I don't think that's a problem. We'll naturally kind of have different options for them and different colored cloaks, like, you know, slightly off green or blue or red or yellow or that sort of thing. And then the mix of all those colors, actually. So it's I'm really not worried. And then it's also the mix of your character, what your character originally looks like, you know, whether he even has a beard or not, and you know, then the races, and so, you know, there's going to be a whole bunch of variety. But this it totally does exist. That this exact one does sort of definitely pull from. Well, not, it doesn't sort of. It pulls from Gandalf for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and so he looked slightly less Gandalf-y when he had the brown hair and beard, but I've been pushing to try to get more indicators of age. That'll be one of the things that we want to look at with character customization, as well as make sure that we can represent some of our gray beards in game, gray hair. So cool. We're gonna zoom all the way back over to the other side here, and yeah, you can see the bard.
Okay. So the bard is a support class, kind of a jack of all trades, kind of a Swiss Army knife. Specialized in, of course, singing and playing songs. Right now, I believe we have them slated as a leather armor wearer. So, kind of the unique take on the bard is, it's conceptual right now, but it's something that we're going to definitely implement and try. Is you kind of have a secondary ability bar that allows you to basically place musical ornaments into your songs. So maybe you can do a trill, so you can get a kind of a double effect off of a song, or you can maybe do a crescendo that's kind of like an amplify effect. So we want to really play into like the music theme of the bard, and give them kind of actual music ornaments that they can apply to their songs that they're playing. So in terms of, you know, what they have access to, you know, your mezzes, your lulls, there will be damage over time songs, there'll be regeneration songs. Yeah, again, really kind of a jack of all trades. They'll also be the fastest class. They'll have a traveler's group kind of song buffs. They can have your fast movement speed, and yeah.
Cool.
For the design on this, something that the bard initially kind of came up with when we were talking about it was, there, you know, I think was it Inq, they were plate wearers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that, for me, you know, I was like, I really struggled with that for a bit. I was like, whoa, plate wearer bard, okay, well, yeah, because I definitely come from a little bit more like D&D, and I didn't really expect that. Well, not just D&D, but just fantasy in general. And usually I don't think of plate wearer bard, but something that I pitch and we're talking about, and the conversation still needs to happen, but this idea that certain slots of each class might have a different like armor class than the rest of your slots. And so in here, I'm playing with that exact design where, you know, the bard has leather on their shoulders, cloth underneath, but then also, you know, a plate chest. So it's like, so there's differences here and there, and all that to me is quite interesting, and it allows us to engage with other armor types without just making this bard fully decked out in plate. And so that there's some arguments for and arguments against, but that's definitely a conversation we still need to have. I do have another concept with this bard without the chest plate as well. So it's not a complete sold on sort of thing, but I actually really like this idea as far as slot dependent armor classes. But then at the same time, I also really like the this diversity of being able to have, let's say, a plate piece for this bard. Also, the long hat. That's something that I'm very excited about. Originally we had a much wider, bigger brim, kind of like your traditional Renaissance sort of thing, but we figured that the wizard actually had that wide brim, so we went with a long ass hat instead. And I think that it'll fit and makes the bard feel pretty iconic in their own right.
And to say something again about the bards, you know, so there's currently we have it set up so that you can twist song, but that ornament bar that I was talking about, musical ornaments, I was thinking about some kind of like a melody mechanic being the repeat. So you could run a repeat to kind of have that melody effect in game, but it wouldn't be like through like a macro. It would actually be like through a pressed ability, and then while you are repeating, the idea is that you still have an active nature to the class through those ornaments. So you're not necessarily just twisting constantly, but you're inserting those musical ornaments where you want them, depending on the nature of the fight and what's going on in the fight. So that's, you know, that's conceptual, that's, you know, to come, and we'll see how it works out. But right now, the current implementation is kind of more of like the classic like style where you're just twisting, and but as we get further in development, we'll see how that feels.
Cool, very cool. Now
I'm kind of wondering if we end up doing the whole music with the bard thing, if you could make like a little, like either note or like melody, and then macro that to one of your abilities, so you could do your custom rock songs as you play your abilities. I don't know. Sorry, totally beside the point and beside the design, but just a fun thought.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to see. Ali, what do you think? Can you do it? Whip up the programming real quick on that.
Programmers can do anything, given enough time.
Yeah, it's magic. It's real life magic.
Cool. Rogue.
So Rogue, because I play Rogue, it's going to be the most overpowered class in the game. So just forget all the other classes and oh, sorry. Okay. So it's a melee physical DPS class and playmaker. Brings small utility, like it brings utility, but doesn't bring like a ton of utility, right? So some of the utility we're talking about is like short duration stuns and incapacitated. So if you saw any of the streams where we were playing with the Rogue, you get an incapacitate, which is a kind of like a short duration mez, and that can if you're soloing, it's not going to be super easy to solo by any means, but rogue is going to be better off than they were in, say, like classic EQ or whatever, right? So you can kind of incapacitate a target, get behind, do a backstab. So they're going to have access to short duration stuns and incapacitates. They'll have probably like they'll have slow through. I want to do slow through poisons, but it's not going to be as massive as like the Shaman slow, for instance, right? It's going to be a definite kind of buffer slow that, you know, if it's like a really threatening target, you'll still want to get that Shaman slow or another really good slow up, but they're also the top physical DPS class, top tier DPS. They'll have, you know, so stealth is, you know, hide sneak rolled into 1, so you don't have to worry about hide sneak. You'll have kind of access to some aggro drops, and we're also talking kind of about like a kind of smoke bomb cooldown based ability where you can jump into the shadows and drop all your aggro, but that won't be like you know, so it'll be a cooldown based, significant cooldown, several minutes, so it won't like be a feign death for them by any means, but they'll kind of have a get out of jail free card every certain amount of minutes. So yeah, just top DPS class, some light utility, some light, you know, stuns and CC, but mostly focused on the damage and playmaking.
Nick?
Oh, they'll also have, access to kind of a single target, like, pacify, kind of like think of like a sap from WoW rogue kind of thing. So, like I said, I want them to have more playmaking duties than they did in like EQ, so.
Yeah. So, Nick, apologies. I realized that when I mute the stream, they can't hear me, but you still can on Discord, so sorry for burping in your ear as you're explaining something.
Oh, I didn't hear anything.
Okay.
I didn't hear anything either, at all. But let's see, Rogue, fairly simple design as far as their aesthetic goes. It's dark cloth and leather and chainmail. You get that chainmail that's padded against the leather, so it doesn't make any sound, and that sort of thing, as well as the a very tight looking aesthetic on their silhouette. So that's something that these probably won't be a geometry or anything. They're just going to be like really close, and maybe the shoulders have a bit of it, but they're really close and compact for the rogue here. And then you can also see that reflected in the hood, close and compact as well. There was a version of the rogue where he could pull down his mask down to his chin, but we'll see whether or not that works. It's kind of very reminiscent of, not reminiscent of, a really good look at the Garrett from the Thief series. How they had that sort of aesthetic, and I like that a decent bit for a thief, so, or a thief or a rogue. So that ended up being something that we might do. But other than that, again, different hood shape design following this like teardrop sort of thing from the shoulders to the knee pads to the hood going down, and having this kind of looser cloth sort of thing on the inner side of his body, which allows for, I think, a whole lot of more mobility. But then having those outer parts be that leather and chainmail combo.
It's funny. The more I look at them right now, the more I wouldn't mind seeing like a little backpack peeking over the edge here, like a compact backpack. But,
oh yeah, totally. Like a messenger bag maybe, or some sort of backpack that allows for that. I could totally see that for sure.
Throw your rope in all of your pilfered goods in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, I'm doing it wrong. I'm grabbing the wrong screen. Oh god, I'm confused. Fanny packs? Oh. Future options.
He also has a little piece of leather to hold his club there. On the other side there, it's a little rectangle sort of thing for his billy club.
Nice. Archer.
So the Archer is a pure physical ranged DPS class, obviously specialized in archery and ranged attacks, wears leather armor, has access to auto fire for archery based attacks, and then they'll also have kind of special attacks that are, you know, archery focused. So like there'll be like a targeted shot that, you know, it's kind of like a wind up kind of attack for big damage. There'll be kind of utility shots as well, like a kind of a dispelling shot for kind of an offensive dispel, and then, you know, so basically how they differ from the ranger, right? So the archer was born out of the want to kind of have a class that focuses purely on the archery, whereas kind of the ranger still has very serviceable archery, but does other things as well. And so archer would be the Legolas to the ranger's Aragorn, if you want to make that kind of comparison. Other ideas we're playing with for the archer are elemental arrow kind of arrows or arrow tips. So maybe like a frost arrow or a fire arrow, you know, depending on the situation. Also maybe kind of like a strafing attack where you're shooting arrows like all crazy out of you, and so those are some of the ideas. But the idea is, you know, very, very focused on doing range damage, and they are in the same tier as, so the physical DPS tiers are rogue at the top, and then the second tier right below that would be monk and archer. So archer is a very sought out DPS class.
Yeah, if anybody saw the designs leading up to this, we actually did a huge pivot from, we had two different starting goals when it came to the archer. One was, well, what if he kind of looked like the classic Legolas? And then I ended up going down the Robin Hood aesthetic. And then we tried this other aesthetic, which was, you know, this heavier look, inspired by more medieval and different type of cultured archers. And at first, again, as always, I'm like, no, I think the Legolas one looks pretty good, and the Robin Hood one looks pretty good. But then, you know, after trying it, I found it pretty immediately apparent that this fit the aesthetic a whole lot more, and differentiated himself from the ranger a whole lot more. With we also have this other element where, you know, I'm trying to find a balance between all the different classes. So we only have, let's see how many we have, 1, 2, and this would be the third hat. So we have lots of hoods, we have masks, and then we have now a third hat with the archer. So making sure that we hit a balance between hats, hoods, helmets, circlets, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And then, you know, in a year or two, they may really, really shine when we're doing ship-to-ship combat, right, Ollie? Cool. Ranger.
So again, the ranger is a melee physical DPS and ranged physical DPS and support, specialized in melee, archery, and magic. Hybrid of the archer, fighter, and druid. Has access to auto fire for archery based attacks. So, you know, you can auto attack with your bow, just like the archer. You won't have access to some of the nice kind of like really nice like shot attacks that the archer has, but you'll still, you know, have ranged attacks that you can do. Just not as powerful, but still quite good. And so it definitely plays into, again, like the Aragorn kind of theme. So kind of a versatile DPS and some utility as well. Also, what was the other thing that I was going to say? So again, they're going to bring group utility. So group buffs. So with tracking, we're thinking about how tracking could work. I'm not sure if it would be kind of like the EQ style or not. It's something we're gonna have to play around with. I was thinking about something more like maybe they could show like a kind of like a directional indicator where like other party members are, something along those lines, or there won't be any mini map in the game, so it wouldn't be like the WoW style tracking or anything like that. Yeah. Oh, another thing is want them to be competitive DPS, right? So again, they're not going to be on that tier of like a rogue or an archer or a monk, but they are not going to be too far below that. So if you were kind of like a classic EQ ranger, expect to be putting out more DPS. So you're not going to be a joke. I definitely want the ranger to feel strong and to be desired in groups. So expect that.
Do you hear that, Pattis? You'll stop being a joke, buddy.
And yeah, so they're also be compared to the Beastmaster and the Spellblade. They wear chain armor instead of leather, so kind of wanting them to be pretty serviceable off tanks. But we'll have to see how it all ends up in the end, because obviously Spellblade could, even though they're wearing leather, right, they may have those absorb shields and spell shields and stuff. So we'll have to see how it all ends up, but definitely want them to be serviceable off tanks and really serviceable DPS.
Droop was asking about pets, and we have discussed tameable, collectible pets. Yeah. So I think that you were saying, Shawn, that you wanted them to also do similar to the Beastmaster, where you could tame pets and stuff like that. And then I think we also talked about kind of flavor pets that are kind of weaker but have some utility to them. But yeah, definitely tame beasts and stuff. Yeah. Always like that on my hunter as well. So
the class design for this was definitely Strider. So we ended up Strider with a little bit of that chainmail coming in from the rogue, but a little bit more loose chainmail as well. In comparison to the rogue, as the rogue has it padded everywhere, you have a little bit more loose here on the along the arms and down on his chainmail skirt as well. A fairly simple design. It's pretty straightforward. We just needed to hit the iconic nature of something like this, and it even comes down to like. I think we had a conversation about whether the archer or the ranger have, their quiver up on their back or on the side and that sort of thing. So it's like, so we ended up pushing that side to, or the the low side to the archer and the high side to the ranger, just because it fit that ranger aesthetic so much. And then for the archer, it makes sense that they'd have it in like a more convenient spot. There's even a possibility of us, you know, like taking that further if we're talking about convenient spots for a quiver and having it more on the side, like right beside on your hip rather than on your lower back. But I did like the lower back look for the archer just because aesthetically it creates a nice silhouette, I think.
Yeah, which at this stage, that's the fun part. That's important.
And again, we have a different hood shape than all the rest, and we gave this guy a little bit of age with a grayer beard, and you might not be able to see it on the resolution on this picture, but I did give him some wrinkles. So it's hard to do at such a high or far back level of detail, and when I down-resed it for viewing and everything, but yeah, it definitely made him a little bit older for sure.
Cool. We're ready for Shadow Knight?
Sure. So the Shadow Knight is a tank class slash hybrid. Definitely focused on drains and dots, and we'll also have a pet, undead pet. Still to be determined how it'll differ from the Necromancer's pets. So we'll have to see on that. But so Shadow Knight is going to be a very, very serviceable tank. So we have two kind of tiers of hybrids. We have the Shadow Knight, Paladin, and Inquisitor, and then we have the Beastmaster. We have the Spellblade, and we have the Ranger. So this is kind of more of the higher tier of hybrids in regards to tanking. So they'll be quite good at tanking and threat generation, and they'll also be really good at absorbing magical based attacks, as opposed to the fighter's physical. So yeah, so a lot of kind of necromantic magics, and tanking, and also some group utility. Probably not as good group utility as you'd expect from the hybrid DPS classes, but definitely good stuff there.
Yeah, for the pets, I haven't done any concepts on them yet, but I have an idea for like a shadow beast or something like that. That would be pretty cool. That might differentiate it from the Necromancer a whole lot. But Shawn, do you have the write up that you did for the Shadow Knight on how they'll be perceived on you? Because it was just phenomenal. I think we should talk about it.
Yeah, I don't have it up at the moment, but essentially we're going through the exercise of even naming of Shadow Knight and trying to figure out, like, all right, but what does that mean in our world, and what do we want to call them? And so we'll reveal more about the fiction and sort of the origin of some of the classes in our lore in the not too distant future. But to sort of without getting into the specifics there, what we wound up talking about was that rather than just have these be an anti-paladin or an evil, in air quotes, knight or something, kind of fulfilling that fantasy, because with every class that we're showing up here right now, Necromancer, Shadow Knight, Paladin, we want to make sure that we build our systems in a very RPG way. We've mentioned our approach to gods and religion and the fluidity there, and the ability to switch religions over time, similar to a faction, potentially even faction up or build relationship with more than one god at a time. We want to provide we want to provide everyone with a lot of agency in how they play their characters. And so it's possible that you can play your paladin as anti-paladin. With the Shadow Knight, it was like, all right, so if we're not going that anti-paladin or sort of that more evil route, then how do we do this? And I think when we started kicking around the idea of them as kind of this demon hunter, monster hunter, not just hunter, but individual that specializes in dealing with that type of magic and those types of forces, that when you came back and was like, oh, so they're kind of like a Witcher. Exactly, MCP Live. So when Goblin was like, oh, like a Witcher, it was like, yeah, you know what? That's going to be a much more fun route to go. So that, it's funny we said it at the same time. It's going to be a much more fun route to go, because then the player has the ability to come in and go, all right, so, I want to play this character as something that's a bit darker, or someone that's a bit lighter or neutral. And then, because the idea too was like, if they're just an evil knight, well, do people let them in a bar? Like, what is that like? What happens? Where can they go, right? And that idea of them being somebody that is maybe, people are wary of them, or they're not necessarily the person you want to sit next to in the bar. But there are those instances where the bar may, the inn or the tavern may welcome you if they've got a monster to deal with, right? So that was kind of the thought that got kicked off with these guys, and we're going to be fleshing out lore and sort of how they're rooted into the world and what that implies for things like you're saying, their pet and their ability sort of flavor and all that stuff as we go. But yeah.
Yeah, and as far as design goes for this guy, it was immediate to me that the color palette needed to be super desaturated and dark. But then I started to mix that a little bit with like this bone color, or this like grayish greenish bone color, and then having the reflections on those and everything. And the first iteration of this guy looked fucking badass, and I loved it.
A little too much.
Yeah, he didn't have any human elements. He was all shadow, and he looked like, Shawn mentioned it a couple times, he looked like an NPC, or like, like this guy's level 70, like this guy's like insane, and I compared to the other versions of or other concepts, I totally agreed, and it was like, okay, how do we calm this down? At first I was thinking, well, maybe we have their kit, or their idea of like, what their armor looks like, what they go for is like intricacy. And I was looking at a little bit of Beksinski's work, Beksinski, I believe, and that was a super kind of like, okay, yeah, we could go that road, that it feels right. And but then we go a little bit pulling back to that, to okay, we need to go a little bit more simplistic as like a template for a lot of these things, and we settled on more asymmetry, along with the a little bit more than the Inquisitor. So you can see on the shoulder and then on the chest plate you have this element of like design that's there, and then on the other side you're going to have a little bit less of that. And so we want the asymmetry to play a part in a lot of these Shadow Knights designs and armors going forward. So that will definitely be a fun one. But yeah, I remember like immediately this guy went from NPC to playable character as soon as we brought in the human element. So where his nose and mouth are and his biceps are, and like those were completely black before, and again, they look really cool, but it was a little bit too much as far as like, is there a player behind that? And so now we have that, then it definitely looks good.
Yeah, and we already know what a cool NPC looks like.
True.
Inquisitor, Nick.
Okay, so the Inquisitor is a tank class / hybrid who is an anti-spellcaster knight. Think of them as the hybrid between a fighter and an enchanter. They'll definitely have some class-specific flavor, though, such as they'll have some like resist debuffs and silences, and generally just anti-magic kind of stuff. And kind of the fantasy behind the class was that Lord Inquisitor Seru or Darth Vader kind of menacing kind of knight that just kind of is out to hunt magic users. And another thing that I think that we're talking about is kind of like magic, like choking effects and stuff like that. And so some kind of some similar crossover to the Enchanter, but definitely more like anti-magic focused. And yeah, definitely have some crowd control too.
Goblin.
Oh yeah. Now, yeah, these guys they were pretty. We went through a couple different designs on these, and ultimately, I'm pretty happy with where they landed, coming from or having this. They started off a lot more bubbly. They started off a lot more like kind of, I think it was Destiny. At one point, they had like a helmet under their hood. But ultimately, it's this combination of asymmetry along with these long flowing pieces of cloth that cover things, cover up the plate. Just because we're going to get into the plate wears here soon. I wanted to mention the kind of, I guess, the direction for how much plate is shown on each one. So we have the Inquisitor. They're about 50-50, so it's about 50% plate, 50% cloth. Though that's just what's shown. The actual gear pieces will be plate. Maybe not the hood. Who knows? But then there's the fighter. He's a 100% plate, pretty much. You know, like he's geared plate, chainmail. Like, you know, he's metal. And so he is really focused on just being that. And then we have the Cleric, where we're going about 80%, because he's a spellcaster mainly. And I'm going to get into spoilers for Nick, sorry. But spellcaster mainly with a little bit of melee. So he's 80% cloth and then about 20% plate. And then the Paladin is the exact opposite of that. So they're mostly melee with a little bit of spellcasting, and that's going to be 80% plate and then about 20% cloth. And so that's where the differentiators on those ended up being. And we can talk more about some of the other designs, but I just wanted to preface some of that for the plate wearers.
Cool. Nick, you ready for fighter?
Yep. So the fighter is a pure physical melee tank class, specializing in protection against physical attacks. Another trait of the fighter is that they put out respectable damage. So we wanted them to feel... So they don't have necessarily too much utility, but the utility that they do bring besides tanking is their damage. So they're going to be kind of on par with like that hybrid DPS tier. So while they're a tank class, they also put out respectable damage, and you can, you know, just as easily invite them to a group, and you know, have them slot in as a DPS, and you don't feel too bad about it. Some of the utility though that we're kind of talking about is shouts, probably some kind of like movement displacement kind of things, like maybe like a charge, stuff along those lines. So definitely want them to feel fun in that regard. kind of moving around and making sure that you're applying threat generation in the right spots and bring what debuffs that you can bring and whatnot. Definitely inspired by the WoW Warrior somewhat, and yeah.
Yeah, and with all of them, positioning, positional opportunities is definitely something we've been talking about. So keep it interesting.
So there was a question in the chat. Will Fighter have that old struggle on threat versus hybrids? So they will not be as good at threat generation as hybrids, but I want them to be better off than they were in, say, like classic EQ era. You shouldn't be like, pressing a button and then it's like, oh, nothing happened, right? So you'll definitely have means of threat generation. You just have to put a little bit more effort into it. And that'll definitely go into the ability design and how that is how that evolves. I have some ideas for it, but it won't be as snappy as, say, as like the hybrid knights, like the Shadow Knight Paladin Inquisitor, but there'll definitely be some means of some meaningful threat generation there.
And as far as the design, these guys have, they originally actually had like a bone, sort of like, what's it called? Like, instead of those horns being all a different type of metal, they were sort of a bone to give some color pop to them. But ultimately, it was like, why would they kind of put bone into that? And like I get the whole Viking vibe, but no, these guys are metal. They're going to be clanging around, and so we gave them a little bit of that intimidation factor with the silhouette of the horns and everything. But we went with the metal on the spikes. With a different material, and I think that ended up both conveying that, hey, hell yeah, they're tanky, they're made of metal. Like, these guys are definitely like going to be one of the most survivable classes in the game. But then as well, that spikiness gave them that little bit of the damage dealing aspect as well. So it was like, okay, we can see them doing some pretty major damage. And really focused on as well one of the metal on there. It's one of the things that I wanted to do, especially in comparison to something like the Inquisitor, was bring this metal and have it have like a bunch of different hues in it. So you have a little bit of blue, a little bit of orange, a little bit of like the in between the grays and stuff like that, to make it feel like this is like kind of like cast iron or something along those lines, where it's like it's used, it's worn sort of, and you're not a knight in shining armor. You're a guy that cares about like, hey, is this covered? Are we good? Yeah, okay. You're decked out, and that's what matters.
Yep. Cleric.
So the Cleric will be the main healer class. They're specialized in the largest, most efficient direct heals and resurrections. Again, we have them as plate wearers, but as Goblin was saying, it's kind of a mix in that department. Expect kind of holy magic, kind of like holy shocks and stuns and stuff like that. But again, they're a very powerful healing class. So again, that's kind of the secondary focus to them is the nukes and stuff. But yeah, very holy focused. But yeah, it's very, very strong healers. Lots of like good curing magic, and yeah, they'll have a lot of different ways that they can heal, and also shielding as well, absorb shields and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the the cloth on this. This was something that I think this is one of the first designs that I ended up actually taking to, or I ended up like, what's the word, like going really back and forth with the whole group on, the whole team on, which was like, you know, clerics, they're heavy, okay, and then it's you know, so I was a little bit struggling, like, okay, clerics are heavy, paladins are heavy, and there was a kind of a struggle, and then, like, you know, I ended up doing a concept like this, and it clicked, and it was like, okay, we can have cloth be more prominent and still have it be a like a plate piece, and so that's where that kind of design idea came from, of the 20% cloth or 20% plate and 80% cloth came from. And another thing that I wanted to do was play around with color palette, and but not just color palette, but color range, or color value, I mean. So you'll see, like, in the cleric, he has that the cloth is very, very bright, and while the plate is very dark. And so if you would imagine, like, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, white is completely white and 10 is completely black. You know, that's what you're talking about when you're talking about value. So like the plate will be about, you know, around like an 8 to a 6 or something like that on darkness, and then the robes will probably land on about like a 1 to a 4, and so you have that distinction, especially in comparison to something like the Paladin.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Nick, did you mention, similar to the wizard, the conversation that we were having was, how do we get them to be a little bit more active? And so one of the things that I felt missing from my cleric fantasy when I was playing mine on Eredune was, I just, especially as a little like armored gnome, I really wanted to be able to have some opportunity to like not just sit there and get into the fray a little bit. And you know, so we've talked a little bit about that sort of balance of activity, and whether or not we can use activity to provide sort of a meaningful return on downtime. So balance downtime versus activity in a way where it makes them a little bit more fun, and also a little bit more durable. That idea of being able to off tank a little bit situationally as a cleric and not just heal. So
yeah. So we're thinking about, you know, kind of like maybe imbuing your weapon with like holy power to give you, you know, various procs and effects, like you know, healing yourself or others through attacks, you know, regaining some mana through attacks, and, you know, different ways that you can kind of get into the fray and auto attack a little bit and bring some benefits to you or your group. So definitely gotta, you know, it's important because a lot of our gameplay comes down to resource management. So you don't want to, you know, you want to make sure that you're not completely ignoring the resource management game, you know, just so you can go in and attack, right? But there's definitely still cool ways of going about having effects like that. So that's definitely one thing that we're going to play on with the cleric and some of the other classes too, like wizard and such. So yeah, be on the lookout for those kind of abilities.
Cool. And that leaves us with the paladin, last but not least.
Okay, so let's see here. Let me get my notes. Oh, I actually didn't have notes for these one. Okay, so Paladin is a tank class and a hybrid. Obviously, it's the fighter cleric hybrid. So very defense and defense focused. Kind of a low damage class, but they bring pretty significant healing for a tank class. So one thing is, I wanted them to be better healers than you would see in like the you know, classic EQ kind of style. So definitely going to be better in that department. They're also this is going to be a trait for all of the hybrids, but they're going to have a physical attack that you can use to kind of sustain your group through healing. So you could choose to use a pretty hard hitting attack, or instead you could on a shared cooldown is another kind of attack that when you use it, it'll heal up your group just a little bit. So it's kind of like sustain healing and kind of support healing that helps keep your group up and keep your group running. And then there will also be kind of more of the traditional heals that are weaker than what you would have at the same level as as a Cleric, Druid, or Shaman. But you'll definitely be able to have some decent healing thrown in there, traditional heals as well. So and also would like for them to be able to resurrect as well, and so do some buffs too.
Cool.
And the design for this guy was very, very fun. Again, talking about the value scale, he might not always be gold, so we can do with silver paladins as well, and that sort of thing. But the value range on his armor, or their armor, paladin's armor, is going to be around probably like a 1 to a 5, so nothing too dark. So that's going to help it help the paladin differentiate itself. And then another thing was that came in a lot was everybody loved, especially on the team, everybody loved the idea of the wings on the head, as well as other places, and so that gave me that feather motif that I wanted to play around with the rest of the design, where it comes draping off the pauldrons, and then as well coming out of the knee slots there. Now, one thing that did kind of bother me was, okay, how are we going to do this? Are they going to be like those giant metal wings? Because I always saw them as an addition to the helmet that wasn't actually a different material. But then, yeah, we just changed that to something a little bit softer, where it's hey, maybe these actually are straight feathers, and that helps with that sort of thing. And another thought that comes into mind with the Cleric versus Paladin was I was looking at the differences, and for the Cleric, it was kind of well, what really guides them, and what is their class about? They're more like disciples of said god, so that they spend their life studying and enacting and or studying, and it's a life of devotion, right? And then the Paladin was much more hand of God sort of thing, chosen by their religion to go out and do justice. And so having those types of things, actually directed the designs of the classes a lot too, where we had well, if they're disciples and they're spending time, and studying and everything, maybe there's something and that references that, and that's where the darkness came from. For the plate was, I thought that it made them feel a little bit more like they were head down in the books, and that same thing with the hood. And then in comparison, we have the Paladin, which they're righteous and they're out there and they're shining and pulling a lot of attention, and that's why their wings are way up on their head and sprawling out, and that's why their cape is so wide and out there and everything. And so ultimately, the differences between these two became a really good opportunity rather than a challenge. I think that happens almost any time that you have something like this.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right, so we have talked through. We've done our initial talk through of all the classes. It's kind of a big moment. I'm really excited. It is fun going through these both on sort of the back end, but then also looking at the aesthetic, and by back end, sorry, both on like just thinking about the gameplay, but then also the aesthetic, and then picturing what we can do with them. It's definitely going to be an alt fest.
Something that I was actually wondering for you guys is, after now we've seen the classes, and this is they're not completely final, of course, but they're at a state where I think they're pretty strong designs to as like a format for some other stuff. But anyway, that's beside the point. What I was wondering was your personal Shawn and Nick, what's your favorite class? What are you going to play as? And I'm not sure if I should extend it as well, but what are you going to play as race class combo? Because for me, that's what gets me excited, actually, looking at all these and thinking about how they apply to different races as well.
I mean,
Shawn, you want to field that one first?
Dude, we're making it so hard. It's the same thing with the races. It's funny. Well, we're going to be getting more background on the lore of the races and stuff like that. But like between the lore of the races and the uniqueness of the races, and now the unique aesthetic of the races, and now the unique aesthetics and sort of the gameplay differentiation of the classes. I mean, shit, man, I am hard pressed. Like, I want to try everything. I did fall in love with that Cleric on Aradune, so Cleric's on the list for sure, but I mean, honestly, I want to try a little bit of all of them. They all look so cool. I'm gonna cop out. I mean, shit, how do you not play a Beastmaster at this point? Look at that sexy dude. Like, just sexy factor. Like,
how do you not play a Beastmaster halfling little guy running around with a fucking
little hairy chest hanging out? I mean, the monk is dope. No, they're all great, and I think when we see the differentiation, further differentiation as we start to get the race class combos going, it's going to make it even that much harder. So I'm going to cop out and just say I'm going to play everything. Yeah, there'll be race class restrictions, and we'll be getting more information out on that, but then there'll also maybe be ways that you can find certain new race class combos that haven't been seen before. So yeah, I'm copping out. Nick, what are you going to play? Rogue?
Man, this is tough. So I don't think I have a one class I want to play, but the classes I'm thinking about are Archer, Spellblade, Inquisitor, and Druid. Those four are my go-to right now. Maybe Elementalist too, and Rogue.
Yeah, I mean, so Gnomish Inquisitor, from the moment we started talking about Inquisitor, has been on the list. So I definitely can't slack on that. But yeah, yeah, Goblin.
Yeah, honestly, it's been really hard to say no to that's the thing. I'm trying to think of how they would go with each race as well. So when I played any MMO, I usually end up having like 10 of one race, just because that one race like speaks so much to me. So I have like 10 undead in World of Warcraft, and it's just like, okay, can I relax on that? And then I have a lot of goblins on that too, and so, but I'm thinking for this, like, I don't think I'll play it, but I just love the aesthetic of like a fighter ogre. Like, there's so much about that just says, holy shit, that guy's ready to just destroy things. Like, he is a tank, and that's something that I really like the idea of. But then I'm also thinking maybe Goblin Archer is the way to go. I'm thinking of Goblin Shaman, Goblin Archer, like a Goblin Beastmaster. Like, I'm thinking about how these apply to goblins a lot. But then I'm also like, well, I know I'm gonna have a wizard deep gnome. I know I'm gonna have a wizard deep gnome. So there's, yeah, it's tough. And then I also want a bard. So, god damn.
I have an idea. Everyone in the chat right now, type what class and what class you want to be. Just class.
Just class.
This is very scientific.
Yeah. We'll have to do another survey here in the not too distant future now that you've got a little bit more info. Hidden tree,
yeah,
all caps.
If you guys haven't, if you guys want to sign up for that mailing list, maybe Shawn will place that mailing list link here in just a quick moment. Then go there, and we're gonna have a survey out on class and races here again. Maybe a class race combo, or maybe just classes now that you've seen them.
Nice.
We totally gotta do a race stream that's similar to this, and we'll make Shawn tell us all the details about all the races instead of me doing the classes. yeah.
When it'll be one of those ones where we'll get Hammond in as well, and we'll start getting into the sort of background on the races and some of the lore. I know people have been asking about lore for a while now. It's not too far off. Not too far off for a bit of a taste for public consumption. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. You'll just have him do it.
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, any opportunity for me to blab, I'll blab. But it'll be fun for him to chime in as well. And it'll be nice because as you start to get more familiarized with the world and the lore behind the races and how also it plays in with the classes, and start to get a little bit of a understanding of the factions involved and stuff, I think it'll really take this up even another notch. So yeah. Oh yeah, I was just picturing, as you were talking, I was picturing Ogre Beastmaster, same sexy outfit, just ogring along, lumbering. So you've got to picture that one as well.
A giant ogre belly hanging out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so cool. What other questions do we have about classes? I know some people came in late as well. What we'll do is we'll get this cut and put up on our YouTube channel as well this weekend. Those of you that aren't subscribed to it, you really should. You really should. We've got over 600 people in Discord now. We've got 1,000. We're heading towards like 1,040 on the mailing list. We can have more than 255 people subscribed to the YouTube. Those of you that don't know, here's our website, here's our Discord, here's our YouTube, here's our mailing list. So there's a lot of shit for you to click there and get fully in the loop. On the YouTube, we've got Goblin doing concept art and posting videos on YouTube. We've got Pattis doing environment art and posting videos on the YouTube. We've got Zukin doing creatures and critters and stuff. We've got Nick doing game design and some QA and getting it up there. Ollie's been doing a short series on programming for a game jam that he's doing, and then he'll also be doing some other stuff. And then I tend to post these streams on there. So that's this many fingers worth of different videos popping up there. We just started the YouTube channel, under a month ago or something like that, and it's already got like 50 some videos. So it's an easy way to sort of scrub through and see. And yeah, just a quick follow-up. B. Decker, JK Frosty, Emperor, Moet. That's I like that name. That's very hip-hop. Thank you for the follows. Nicodemus, thank you for giving out the gift sub. Squid Pasta, look at you. You lucky pasta you. So, yeah. That was all my commercials for now. What else we got? What's going on, chat?
Yeah, is there any like class specific like questions or anything, definitely.
I'll zoom in again too for the people that missed it.
Something that I think we or I missed at least was on the monk. I just want to get into some details on that. Originally, the stone there that has those rings and those like stone plates within the design were actually metal. And then we ended up going, this would be really cool as like a heavy stone or something, and then we can keep that pretty much within the leather slot. But then upon that, there's this extra idea that I had, and I'm not sure where we're gonna land on it. But if you look on his left shoulder, there's like this sort of enchantment or like tattoo sort of thing. So the original idea from that was places where you didn't have an armor slot, like let's say you didn't have like gloves or something, or you didn't have like a head slot or a mask slot or something. There's this idea that you could enchant yourself with, or not enchant yourself, but like have like a tattoo of some sort, similar to like if you guys know what henna is. It's like this hand tattoo that's temporary. It lasts about 2-3 weeks, something like that. But this idea that you could put on this this slot for, you know, and it's like locked in for a day or something. Or maybe, I think Shawn was talking about, maybe we have these stones with these designs on them, and then you place them next to your character or something, and it.
Yeah, that was because Zukin was like, but I don't know how I feel about putting a tattoo in a slot, like for the hands, because I was like, well, you know, or if we need some fiction, we can have some, you know, beautiful smooth stones that match the stone in the belt, etc. And the stones are magic, and you're holding the stones in your hand, and as you hold the stones in your hand, the tattoos appear on the backs of your hands. And so we can fix whatever with some lore and a little bit of creativity and maybe a nice item icon. So, yeah.
Said much more eloquently.
I've been known for my eloquence. Oh. Yeah, so zooming back through these guys. Monk, Beastmaster, Shaman. Yeah, Ali, you're gonna have to code henna now, but after ship-to-ship combat. Shaman. Spellblade. I really like the way his helmet turned out. There's Poop Maker. You called him and he appeared, Belfaster. Elementalist. Enchanter. Druid. Poop Maker, don't laugh. You haven't been around, but I think Belfaster brings you up every stream now. Enchanter, Druid, Necromancer, Wizard. Bard, the Rogue, or you can spell it Rouge. I know how MMOs are. Rogue or Rouge, whatever you want to call yourself. Archer, Ranger, Shadow Knight, Inquisitor, Fighter, Cleric, and Paladin. Zukin asked, are we going to put class and race write-ups on the website soon? Yeah, one thing that's going to delay that a little bit is just looking at the best way to present it and have it look good. It's going to sound silly, I know, but it's funny. It was a conversation I was having last night with someone. Just basically looking at the website and figuring out a way of getting all of this in a nice format, adjusting the website a bit and making it so that we get the most bang for the buck. And it's one of those things we can iterate on, but like these concepts are so beautiful, and the race concepts are so beautiful. Definitely get on our Discord and check out the channel that we have for posting the latest art if you haven't already, and take a look at that stuff. But but when you've got wonderful art like this, and we've got, you know, the nice blurbs and stuff in there, I want to make sure that we present them in a nice way. And given the style of the art and given what we're shooting for with really that old school pen and paper kind of look to the website, I think we can probably figure out some cool ways of presenting it. So we'll be working on that in the next little bit and getting it out up there. But yeah, it's super exciting to be able to show this stuff off and reveal it. We've been looking at it behind the scenes for a couple weeks now, and it's exciting. It's just been it's been kind of a nail biter waiting to be able to show you guys and talk to you all more openly about it, because we really do like being able to share, and it's just so much fun, like sharing what we're doing in real time with you and getting the feedback. Zen Farty said maybe we could do a survey for feedback on each class. Yeah. I think the next set of surveys will come out after we get the blurbs out, so that you got more to go off. You should get a little bit of background on the races, more background and sort of info summarized that Nick's presented on the classes, and we'll and also like race class combos and stuff, so that you can make a more informed decision when you're given feedback moving forward. So expect all of that to come out in the coming weeks, and then there'll be a new survey on the mailing list. But definitely sign up to the mailing list so that you get like the latest update and all that stuff as well. Belfaster said do a quick themed backdrop with painted vibes for each, and text paragraph is cool, very D&D guide-ish. Yeah, that's kind of the image. It's, you know, a little offset and text here and boom, 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 boom. It's doable. And get that kind of monster manual feel maybe to the races, and so can picture it. It's just about executing on it now. So Blackjack Nation, thank you for the follow. Squid Pasta, glad you like them. Cool, guys. It's 10:30 here. I feel like, you know, if you guys are winding down a little bit with the questions and stuff in chat, what you can do is just hit us up in Discord, and we'll get this up in Discord ASAP. And maybe break out each one of them as a separate thing to post Goblin, so that we can really see them. Yeah, for sure. You know, just getting the compilation up will be cool as well, and then we can work on the other stuff. Yeah, so we'll see you guys in Discord. It'll be cool for us to hand over. Nick, do you want to do some work tonight? Are you streaming? Or today?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool. So what we'll do is we'll let Nick get his stream up. And for those of you that haven't seen the game itself, Nick will be in game. I was in game earlier, but it crashed in the background. Unity has stopped working. Yeah, so I was playing with a thing, Nick. When you get in there, maybe you see if you ask a guard where the docks are, that should be in, and it'll direct you towards the docks. I was playing around with that system with market, but what I was trying to do is kind of see if I could trick the system and say if you ask market, because there's two different ones, the guard would ask you which market are you referring to, and then if you said the right market, it would direct you to the market. But logic kicked my ass, and market always just triggers, since, you know, it's the keyword in all three phrases. So yeah. Did I get a chance to see the Beatles in game? I haven't. You know what, while he's loading that up, let me just reload the client real quick, or the editor, and let me get back in there, and then I can hand over from in-game. Do a poll of the races as a reminder. Okay, let me hop in Discord and grab that real quick, and I'll show the races as well. Come into Discord, art update. Open original. Yeah, for those of you that have not seen our player races, let's check that out. That's a great idea. So, let me see what this looks like. Nope, didn't want to do that. Want to do that. Cool. All right, so going left to right, if you look above, you'll see the ideas that we have for different skin tone options for the various races. And we'll get going. We've got, first up, Wood Elves. Then our humans, which you're seeing a lot of humans in this mix. We've got our haughty and vastly superior to everybody High Elves. We've got our Deep Elves. And naturally, some of the races within our game will refer to them as Dark Elves. They're called Deep Elves because, much like the Deep Dwarves and the Deep Gnomes, we have a vast underworld in our game, and they have, over time, through various reasons, you'll get to learn, essentially set up their empire in the deep. We've got our ogres. Zoom back down here. We've got our deep dwarves. We've got our dwarves. Halflings. Gnomes. Deep gnomes. Goblins. Trolls. And our special guest, the Mandrake. Zoom in on these little ones a little bit more. Is the Mandrake... Is that a Mandrake root guy thing? Yes, it is a Mandrake root guy thing. Going to be an altaholic? Well, that alt and replay and the journey itself is a big focus for us. Mandrake was not in the poll yet. Because again, special guest. So yeah, the differentiation in sort of their personality and worldview and origin and all of that stuff is going to be a lot of fun to run through with you guys. Yeah, so that's them. And let me hop in here. Maybe the female is a mandrake and the male is a ginseng. Oh, there's the beetles. No, it's funny. I was so focused on trying to see if I could get this thing to work that I didn't run over and even look. There's Nick. We're going to be handing the stream over to him in a few minutes. Ooh, I didn't notice the designs on the deep one. Here, let's do this. Let's do this. GM on. Time set 12 a.m. Oh man, I'm looking forward to seeing these guys in the deep. Oh, I didn't realize there was music playing in the background the whole time. Hopefully it wasn't too distracting. Was it too distracting? I don't even hear it on my end. Amazing. I was worried about it being too quiet just now. I was like, I should turn up the turn on some music so you guys don't get bored. Oh, I can see them. Yeah, we'll keep working on the lighting with them, but even this looks good. Can't wait to see the blue ones down in the deep. Oh, look at his red eyes. Very nice job, Zukin. If you guys haven't seen it, we've also got... Ooh, you made it even darker. Yeah, I can't wait to see these guys in the deep. We'll have to get that fixed so that we can spawn some stuff in there. Yeah, I'll look at this guy for you. And don't forget, Nick's going to be streaming right after me. We're going to raid him, and so you'll slot right in there, and he'll be doing design work, and we'll definitely be running through here a lot more.
I think the fire beetles had emissive eyes. I don't know what happened. They had a glow to them.
Let me see if I can... I want to see him from a distance now. We'll get up here on the wall and take a look. Nice. So I'm gonna change the time one last time before I'm out of here. That people that haven't seen it before. Oh, you're up there flying around. I was like, what the hell is in the sky? Wasn't sure how to get to deep dunes, if that's even possible yet. Yeah, you can zone into deep zone from 2 different places in this zone. And you can zone in through Death Valley and also through No, I think that's it. There's what? There's Oh, and through that trap that Nick put into Fallen Watch. So yeah, you can zone in there. Or you can just zone. Potentially zone. Maybe zone. Or I could just be zoning to desktop. No, I made it. I made it. I made it. I'm in here now. So yeah, as I was saying with the deep elves and the deep gnomes and the deep dwarves, we've got entire underworld that we want to build. Well, under the overworld, which is a perfect place for it. And so it'll be just like overland zones where some of them are more traversal zones and there'll be camps and things like that. And then some will feel more like an outdoor dungeon and then others will actually just lead into dungeons. So this zone could be accessed through a number of points in the overworld, and you can just run along here and then pop up into other overworld zones. And it's a bit smaller, so it's kind of a shortcut, to be honest. And like I said, Nick's even been kind enough to put a trap in our little test dungeon. So if you go in the wrong spot, it just plops you in here and you gotta walk your way back out. So don't do that or your group will be pissed. Tic Tac Inquisitors? Tic Tac guys, yeah. It's gonna be sad when they go. We're gonna be working on merch, and some of the merch that has really been heavily requested is all of our original placeholder Tic Tac guys, our capsule men and capsule bats and capsule skeletons and stuff like that. So you may be able to get some merch with the capsule guys on it. That way you can remember them always. So yeah, Nick, is your stream up and running?
Yeah.
Cool. So what I'm going to do now is basically get out of here and let you see Nick do some work. Oh wait, before I leave, zone. I'll show you what I was talking about, Nick. Will there be non-combat pets? Those would be perfect. I'm a big fan of non-combat pets to collect and hang out with and stuff like that. Kind of like we talked about mounts and pack animals and pets, though. It'll be interesting because I do think everything that is a thing should be able to be killed. So you can have a non-combat pet with you, maybe, that trucks along with you, but your pet might get whacked and you'll have to put it up and put it in your backpack and get it rezzed or something. So that's one thing to consider. Same thing with your mount. And I don't know that you can stuff your mount in a backpack. So that's going to be a problem. Cool. So Guard Nicholas, if I hail him, how may I help you? So Ollie just put this in and was playing with it. Essentially, we want to make it so that the game is a lot less gamey and like, oh, here's a tutorial that we're going to walk you through and all of that kind of shit. Or like, hey, you have to do this very directed bit of content to learn the game. Honestly, it should just be about interacting naturally with NPCs, interacting with the challenges that you seek. Like, I am hungry and I am thirsty. Wow, I guess I am now officially on a quest to find food and drink. Otherwise, my ass is going to stay hungry and thirsty. So it's that kind of thing. And so maybe you ask people in chat, which is a great way to solve things. It's a social game. We want you to be social. Or you go up to a guard and you're like, where can I find some food? And the guard's like, well, there's this inn and that inn. And you go, I want to go to this inn. And the guard goes, it is about so far away over yonder. And it's like, all right, so how are we going to communicate that? And so the first bit of that was implemented. Ollie's allowed us to put in points of interest now. Though, like I said, there's a bit of a logic problem with one of them or two of the ones that I put in. But like here I can say, where are the docks? And Guard Nicholas says, if you're looking for the docks, there are ways to the southwest of here. Right? And so it's like, all right, well, let me cart my ass to the southwest. And all of the various inhabitants in the town will be able to pick up on things like that. Like if I go to this guy, who may or may not stop for me. I just realized we don't have NPCs stop when you talk to them, when you hail them. Alright, so there's still ways to southwest from this person as well. And so, this was like the first little implementation of it, but essentially starting with this type of concept where we can start to have people know where things are and respond to you in an intelligent manner, and maybe they have different dispositions and, you know, things like that. So, it'll be something that's coming online. We're going to play with it more, but again, there's a lot of this RPG type stuff that we want to get back into our MMORPG. Yeah, so folks, thank you for hanging out tonight. I'm glad that folks liked the concepts for the classes that we showed. Those of you who are new, I'm glad you had a chance to see the player races. Don't forget to join our Discord. You can look at all of that stuff to your heart's content. Join our mailing list, and
good show.
Thank you for the bits. Appreciate that. Zab, 1,000 bits is very kind of you. You guys, you know what? always appreciate when you subscribe. Always appreciate when you get bits and stuff. But honestly, we're just happy if you get into Discord with us so we can chat. Follow us, you know, subscribe on YouTube so you see the updates. Join the mailing list, and always just tell your friends about it. Like, get the word out, please. Yeah, so there's our YouTube, there's our mailing list. Isan, thank you for 12 months, buddy. It's good to see you. We're wrapping up. I'm about to raid Nick, and he's going to continue on from here. So, yep, let's do that. Where's the damn raid button? Yeah, have a great weekend, everybody. Nick is waiting on us, starting the raid now. And Nick will be able to continue to show you the game, all of, you know, design stuff, answer all of your questions. It's a fantastic stream. It's more coherent than mine. And you're going to love it.